Thank you for joining me today. I'm Madelyn Blair, and this is Unlocked, a show all about building the resilient leader in you. In our increasingly digitized world, the impact of the digital realm on our well-being has never been more crucial. Today, we're going to talk about how technology can actually help our health. And after our guest, I'll be offering you grounds for thought, so be sure to stay tuned to see what's brewing. So, what is digital health, and how can it enhance our lives? How much attention should we give it in our daily routines? As I prepared for this show, I couldn't get my head around tools for digital health. Then I read something through one of the blogs of my guest, and one image stood out. So let me show you that image. As soon as I saw those tools, they have nothing to do with health, of course, but suddenly it says, oh, these are tools to make life easier for me. All right, now I've got it. When I saw it, I realized the operative word here is tool. And with that, I actually became excited to have this conversation with my guest, longtime friend and colleague, Craig DeLarge. I'm going to bring Craig on while I introduce him. Let me get us better on the screen, Craig.
All right. Good to see you today. Good to be here.
Oh, great. Well, Craig DeLarge is renowned digital health strategist and researcher. Currently, he's working with innovative organizations like Hands-On L&D and is it Kasana Health? Is that how you say it?
Yes.
All right. His extensive experience includes collaborating with leading healthcare providers such as Merck, Novo Nordisk, and J&J to develop pioneering digital health strategies. Beyond digital health, Craig is also partnering with these industry giants on healthcare customer development and team leadership initiatives. And in addition to his industry expertise, Craig has contributed to academia as an adjunct professor of business ethics and organizational leadership at Temple University. So once again, Craig, welcome to Unlocked.
It's good to be here. Looking forward to a good discussion today.
I think it will be. Well, I have to also tell the audience that you, Craig, are one of the most effective lifelong learners I have ever met.
Thank you very much for that.
I know it doesn't matter what the topic is. You always add to the conversation, and not with just ideas and data, but references that will allow a listener to actually check it for themselves.
Yes.
So I have always been impressed with this breadth of knowledge and how you retain that you've learned it. Anyway, so I'm looking forward to this, no doubt. Okay, we often think of technology as something that induces stress, makes us more efficient, but it increases our stress levels. As our companies stress the use of technology, there seems to be an acceptance that the stress it produces is just part of the work. Is this reasonable, or should we be thinking more about this as leaders?
Well, I would say that anything works until it doesn't. Right. So for decades, we have been using, I'm going to refer to digital technology in particular, as a way of creating quantum leaps from the standpoint of increased productivity, convenience, comfort, efficiency. I think that coming up to the pandemic, we were already seeing the edges of that efficiency and effectiveness fraying. And I think that the conditions of the pandemic then went ahead and tipped us off of a certain cliff. So that now on the other side of the pandemic, and it was building going in, we see more and more research showing us how the unskillful use of various digital technologies, whether it's my smartphone, social media. Haven't gotten so much into virtual reality yet, but we'll get there. Video games have actually become the source of depression, anxiety, in some cases, unfortunately, suicide. It exasperates post-traumatic stress, and on and on and on. But understand it's just a tool,
Mm.
right? I mean, you
Yep.
showed that the pictures of those tools. Every one of those tools can be used to break a window or crush my hand or break a limb, or it can be used to build a house,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Or to craft something of beauty.
Yeah.
And so, with this tool, and it's a wonderful tool, I think that now is a time that we begin to put more focus and emphasis on balancing skillful use with unskillful use. All of us know how to use these tools to work, communicate, be entertained, and shop. But I think most people, if you were to ask them, how do you use your smartphone, your smart watch, your virtual reality, your digital television as a way of supporting your being more well, more resilient? I think most people don't really know or understand how they might do that. That's what's going on.
Okay, well, there's no question because even I am sort of like, okay, tell me what this really means,
Yeah,
Craig.
yeah,
And I think somewhere in something that I read that you wrote or about the subject, they used the word um, no,
oh,
cyberchondria.
cyberchondria.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I think that was partly of what you were talking about.
Yeah, so cyberchondria is when my use of the information capability of digital technology causes me to become more worked up, stressed out, and paranoid about all the things that might go wrong with my health. Here, I think it's very important to understand that for as long as human beings have had technology, even before digital, technology enhances, amplifies, or accelerates the current conditions. So, whatever the foundation of my behavior, my philosophy, my mindset, my habits are, if you give me a technology, whether it's analog, social, digital, it's going to amplify and accelerate that. So, people who are cyberchondriacs are also people who are hyperchondriacs. It's just that when you give them the power of information collection and analysis that is embedded in a smartphone or a computer, that technology amplifies or accelerates this concern about one's health.
Well, what comes to my mind
Yeah.
as you're saying that is if I had a device that constantly monitored my blood pressure, I'd be looking at it all the time. Okay, how am I doing? Am I doing this? I'm in a big meeting.
Yes.
Is that what you mean?
That's part of it.
Yeah.
So that's where we go from information to tracking,
Yeah.
right? Sensors in digital devices have increased our ability to collect information on a continuous basis that tells us various things about our external and internal worlds. Again, skillful use. It's a skillful use to look at it occasionally in order to see where I'm getting out of the zone of health. But if I become obsessed with it, now that's an unskillful use.
Got it.
And so this is what I call the Promethean dilemma. So you know Prometheus, he got fire and right, the gods
Yeah.
weren't crazy about it, but here we go. The question is, can we cook dinner without burning down the house?
Yeah.
Right? The
Hmm.
technology is for cooking dinner. That's a beneficial thing. But if I'm not skillful in how I use the fire, I'm going to burn down the house. And I'm afraid that this is what we see whenever we get technologies. Right? We start with digital technology. We're about to see it with AI.
You you talk about this, and I think you talk about particular side effects
Yeah.
of this. You said there are 4 symptoms of someone who might suffer from this. What are these, and how common are they?
So So one is hypervigilance, which is the constant checking, checking,
Yeah.
checking. Every little thing that happens to me, it's like, that's not an ache, that's a disease,
Yeah.
right? The other one, if I'm recalling properly, is going to be so there's hypervigilance. I'm going to need your help here a bit. The other one was horribilizing.
Horribilizing?
Horribilizing, right. So this is where I extrapolate. I read something, then I'm I kind of put an overly negative attribution. So let's say that something I'm dealing with right now is I've got difficulty swallowing, right? It's something that runs in my family. It comes with aging. Well, I could just think to myself, I need to modify some of the things around, the speed at which I eat and my diet and this sort of thing. Or I could go spin off into this is stomach cancer,
Mm. Yeah.
right? That's
Yeah.
horribilizing.
Ah.
And I could burn myself up with, wondering about this, that, and the other, thus being distracted from other more important, factors or issues that are a part of my life. And so this is where, once again, I'm going to keep coming back to this point of skillful use. That any technology that I use where I don't use it skillfully is going to hurt me. I'm then going to model that for my children, other family members, and my community. Now, as a function of that modeling, they're going to hurt themselves. So I've been reading a lot of reports lately. We fret about how children use technology, the whole
Yeah.
screen thing.
Yeah.
But research is showing more and more that the children are merely modeling us, right? So
Yes.
children tend to reflect the same use of technology that they see in their parents. Because children don't recognize, and this is going to sound like I'm justifying, that when I'm using my screen 8 hours a day, it's so that we can eat, right? The children are going, well, mom and dad use it 8 hours a day, but that's because they need to do that in order to make a living so
Ooh.
that we can all have a house. They just see somebody using a screen. So their thing is, well, if mom and dad use it 8 hours a day, then I guess I should use it 8 hours a day.
I have never thought about that.
Yeah, that's it. Right. Right. Children don't make that distinction.
Well, of
They
course not, because
they
they
get
learn
angry.
from watching. And
Yeah, they get angry with us when we say do as I say, not as I do.
yeah.
So this is part of our dilemma.
Oh, now I'm sitting here thinking to myself, okay, so if in fact you are a person who works at home and does work on the computer, how do you translate that action so that the child recognizes it's something different? And it could be, now I'm going to think crazy, but
Okay.
it could be you say to the child, this is my work. Now let's do your work. And you may spend like you won't spend 8 hours, but you'll spend a lot of time with their toys because their job is to learn from the toy. I'm just thinking, how could we make that transition
Well, one, I think that we as adults have to learn how to better moderate our own modeling,
as well? Yeah,
right? Because frankly, 8 hours on the screen, even though it might be the means of me making my living, it's not healthy for me,
yeah, yeah.
right? The other thing is, I think that we have to model for our children what we're doing on the screen, inclusive of a healthy use of the screen. So, like, to give you a concrete example, with my grandson, who right now, that's the chief modeler in my life, right? Because my kids are grown. Um, I need to take more time to help him understand how I'm using my screen, not only for work, but also for health. So that he doesn't kind of, well, granddad uses a screen, I'll use a screen. He needs to have a deeper understanding of how does granddad use that screen. He needs to hear me articulate that, yes, I use my screen, but I also take breaks every 90 minutes. I'm using
Mm.
Pomodoros and paying attention to ultradian rhythms and this sort of thing, right? The
Ah,
other thing is I need to do a better job of using the screen with him. whether that's playing games or certain things we watch together. So using the screen as a basis for connection. But
Mm,
what we know is that when any of us become unwell as a function of using technology, it's because our unskillful use has created isolation versus connection.
mm.
Those screens are just as capable of creating connection and affiliation and community. And lots of people use it that way.
Yes, I was thinking myself in anticipation of this.
Yeah.
You know, I have colleagues around the world that I talk with
Yeah.
now, and I can talk with now. Before
Right.
then, the best we could do would be occasional emails back and forth. But now
Exactly.
we can talk. Yeah.
Right. Right. So the question then becomes, you know, 10, 20 years from now, when we're having this discussion, will there be as much acknowledgement and practice of the healthful uses of these technologies
Mm.
so that that becomes the majority use,
Yeah.
and the minority use is kind of the dysfunctional, unhealthy?
You
But
know,
right now, we've got it turned around the other way.
I also am thinking that, and I don't mean to judge,
Sure.
but there are some people who use the screen as a way, as a babysitter.
For sure.
And that means there's no attention, as you're suggesting, that the child understand why this is valuable or anything.
See, but here's where we have to consider, and by the way, I didn't hear that as judgment. What I translate that into is that in our individualism as a society, we've got many problems that we are asking individuals to resolve as a way of not taking, not holding systems and structures accountable.
Mm.
So consider that one of the reasons that screens have to be babysitters is because we don't have work cultures in our
Yeah.
society that give adequate support
Support.
when
Yeah.
it comes to the care of children, and which does not give parents the luxury to be moderately versus hyperproductive.
Mm-hmm.
That's a system structure. But what we like to do in our society is say, well, let's not worry about the systems and structures. Let's just leave individuals with the sense that you need to figure that out or you failed. And if there are negative consequences for that, well, you're irresponsible. You should have done something about that. But we can look all over the world at other societies that value family and children to a greater degree, going beyond just lip service, where they make investments, they provide a culture. It's not that there's no responsibility for the individual, but there is such thing as over responsibility attributed to the individual.
Mm.
I think that's, as a society, that's where we are. But I also, because I curate my news so that I pay probably more attention to local news than I do to national news, I can see all around me very many experiments, um, and projects where local communities are working on alternatives.
Ah,
So I'm hopeful in that regard.
oh, great.
Yeah.
Well, okay, that actually gives me a little hope. So
Okay.
I can now ask one of my tough questions.
So, I don't know if you saw a blog post that I wrote about one's digital content diet.
I
Right.
think I
So
saw it, but I
now
did
let's
not
go.
read it.
So
I'm
let's
sorry.
go. And I'll be succinct here, but this connection, right, between technology and health, or
Yeah.
technology and wellness. The same way that I can't eat anything I want if I want to avoid having diabetes and metabolic syndrome and all this, well, I can't expose myself to everything that I want if I'm going to be socially, psychologically, and mentally healthy. The same way that I have to eat a little bit of sugar and junk food occasionally, but mostly eat plants, then I have to make sure that I curate my content diet so that occasionally I'm exposed to violence and dystopian topics and this sort of thing, but that I create a greater degree of positive, hopeful, resilient exposure. And then that then becomes a part of my mental, psychological, social health.
You know, I really appreciate that because I did something similar to this.
Yeah.
Gosh, it must have been 20 years ago.
Yeah.
I stopped watching television news. It says
Yes.
I can't govern what they say, but if I go to a newspaper, I can read what I choose to read.
There you
So I
go.
did something very similar.
Exactly. Right. See, this is skillful use.
Yeah.
But when we don't use individual skill and we leave ourselves open to whatever industry, profit making industry gives us, we're going to have a problem because they don't have a mandate or a priority or a valuing of our health. They're
Mm-hmm.
doing what we as society asked them to do,
Yeah.
which is by all means necessary, make enough money so that our pensions look good so that we can retire well.
Yeah. Well,
Right? So they do what they do, but we have to be more skillful about creating a certain separation from the effect of what they do on us and our families and our communities.
let's talk a little bit about the impact, the effect. What kinds of stress are we experiencing because of this um, not useful, um, respectful use of the technology?
Yeah, so I like to think about stress through the lens of four areas or four sources of stress, right? So there is social stress, which is what comes from other people, right? Wherein Sartre said that other people are hell, but each other is heaven. Okay. The other type of stress is emotional, psychological, mental stress, which has to do with how we respond to our feelings and our thinking. We've all been conditioned to
Mm.
think certain ways in the quest for survival. It's been given to us by our families and ancestors. Many of us are very successful because of it, but when it goes overboard, it then becomes toxic. And
Mm.
then the other side of that is how we respond to our emotions and feelings, right?
Mhm.
The other is environmental stress. So we have all kinds of toxins um, and antitoxins, by the way, in our water, our air, our food. That creates a stress on us. And then there's physical stress, where some people might jump to, well, lifting too much weight. But we know that the dominant physical stress in our society now is sedentary lifestyles,
Yeah.
that we sit too much. I think the Surgeon General said that sitting for 6 to 8 hours a day at your desk working is the equivalent of smoking a pack of cigarettes or something like that.
Yes, I hated hearing that.
Exactly right. So these are four sources of stress
Yeah.
that I think you could categorize, like anything that's stressing you out, you could put in those four categories, right?
Mhm.
And so all around us, we can see that in a hyper individualistic, hyper productive, atomized or isolated society that's driven by financial economic growth with the neglect of environmental or social economic activity, that you know there's a there's this author Shasha who talks about the idea that when we look at mental disorder, we might consider that mental disorder is a healthy response to a disordered society,
Wow.
right? Rather than saying there's something wrong with the individual, we
Yeah.
might say that no, the individual is actually reacting in a healthy way for purposes of their survival against a system that, if left unadapted to, would
Mhm.
kill all of us. It is no coincidence that depression is now one of the top causes of disability on the planet, reflecting that we as a species are adapting for purposes of our health and survival to a dysfunctional global system.
You know what comes to my mind is more localized, so to speak. if you're in a work environment where every time you ask a question, you get shunned, you get criticized, your behavior, your survival behavior is to stop asking questions. Well, eventually, even your mind stops asking questions. Even you become less curious, less inquisitive. You learn less. You don't progress as well.
Right.
Yeah, very
Right.
interesting.
Because survival is the first imperative.
Yeah.
Because without that, all these other concepts of fairness, justice, if I'm not alive, the other stuff doesn't mean anything. So we as human beings tend to adapt for survival to the sacrifice of other things. But we know we want a society where people don't have to do that as much. So let's keep working at it.
Let's keep working at it.
That's right.
Okay. So we have lots of stressors, lots of areas of stress.
Yep.
Maybe we should talk about some of the tools, some of your favorite tools. And as you know, I have a picture of some of those tools.
Okay.
Do you want to bring it up now, or we could do it later?
You can bring them up now and I can speak
Okay.
directly to them.
All
So,
right. These
so
were the first. That was the first batch.
Okay.
And there's the
All
second.
right. Okay. So yeah, I can work with this. So let me frame this a bit. We talked about sources of stress. We also recognize that there are ways we cope with stress. We cope with stress through what I call the 5 pillars. We have to sleep well, eat well, relax well, move sufficiently, and relate to ourselves and our others. We call these the 5 pillars of health. Now, the fact is that current digital technologies that we have, whether it's your smartphone, as you see here, your smart watch, we can get into virtual reality, mobile apps, and so forth and so on, all currently have capabilities that allow us to sleep better, eat better, move more, relate better, relax better. The question, though, is, am I using the various mobile apps, sensors, screens, content that's made readily available, and the community that can also be obtained through those channels in a deliberate, skillful fashion that allows me to be more healthy and more resilient? Or am I mindlessly, unskillfully using these same tools in a way that leaves me disconnected and isolated, that leaves me susceptible to every message, right? That corporations send me about eating junk, sitting still, staring at television, being afraid and isolated from people and not engaging in community. Like, you can see there's a light side and a dark side to both of those. And so when we talk about tech-enabled wellness, it really is about very deliberately and skillfully rethinking how we use technology. Cal Newport of The Deep Life, in his book Digital Minimalism, talks about the importance of making sure that we use technology versus technology using us. For most of us right now, we are being used by our technology in order to make organizations more profitable. But it doesn't have to be that way. We can get to a place, we and our children, where we actually use the technology to support our values, the things that we want to see come to fruition in the world, and our health, and then stop. And then stop. And then go engage in what he calls purposeful leisure. But if I don't have an agenda of purposeful leisure, if I don't understand what my values are, if I don't have a vision of a better world, then what do? I just go down a rabbit hole in an abyss of digital technology addiction. And this is what we're trying to change, right? We hear a lot of bemoaning about that rabbit hole. We don't hear as much about how the technology can actually be leveraged in a way that helps us to create the world and the health and the resilience that we want to see. And that's what tech-enabled wellness is all about. I'll give you a moment to
absorb this.
yeah,
Yes.
yes.
Okay.
Just think about broccoli versus Coca-Cola.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I got it. Now that I got.
Okay. Okay.
Here's the question I have. Okay,
Yes.
I spend a lot of time on a screen during the day. I'm
Yeah.
writing, I'm having conversations like this. At night, when I should be doing, if I think about it, I should be doing what you called relaxing.
Yes.
Okay. And I find that I'm back on the screen watching a movie or something to entertain me.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking to myself, okay, now is that, am I doing this deliberately? Am I really deliberating on this and thinking about it carefully
Yeah.
or not? And this is an interesting question for me now.
Yes, it is. Right. And so let me just give you some examples of how I grapple with that, because I'm not perfect at this by any stretch, right? I'm just better than I was a year ago. Okay. So as every year I get a bit better, I'm better.
Okay.
So I use the app Insight Timer. And Insight Timer is where I engage with various timers and bells and reminders and communities that help me to keep up my movement practice, yoga, Tai Chi, my breathing practice, meditation, right? I engage in community. We talked about relationships.
So, no, you have to be more specific.
Yeah,
So, what I'm hearing or thinking rather, and
yeah,
I don't want to make an incorrect assumption, is
sure.
that because it's called an insight timer, you can say, I want alerts at these times.
Yeah, so it's a meditation app, is what it is. And it has various types of timers and bells, but also courses and communities related to health and wellness and meditation and this sort of thing,
Ah,
right? And so that app is one of the cornerstones of my health practice and specifically relates to my movement, relaxation. Okay. Um, my smartwatch. So I have a Fitbit, and my Fitbit tells me at the end of an hour, it'll send me an alert and say, "You've been sitting. You got 10 minutes to take 200 steps." Because what it helps me with is I'm supposed to take 250 steps every hour all day. So, having something that says, Craig, you've been sitting too long. Get up and do some movement. And one of the things that I've been working with are what I call movement snacks. Do you know what a movement snack is?
no.
Because I hate exercise. You notice I never use the word exercise. I use the word movement. But throughout the day, when I take a break, 5 minutes to do a 2-minute plank or to go do 200 steps, walk up and down the street in front of my house, or to do not a full yoga routine, but just to take one yoga asana and do that one stretch,
Hmm.
or to do 5 forms of Tai Chi. All these things can be done in under 5 minutes. That's why it's a snack,
This,
right?
this is extremely helpful to me.
Yeah, but interspersing that throughout the
Yeah,
day.
exactly. But it also gets away from the guilt. You have this report that has to go out. How can you stop and do yoga? Well,
Right.
you can take 5 minutes.
Yeah, 5 minutes. And it's a necessary 5 minutes in order to reset, right? To reset my mind,
Mm-hmm.
to get stress out of my body, to get oxygen into my lungs and my brain. Now anyone could do that anyway. I'm just talking about how the technologies around me, I've calibrated them to remind me,
Mm-hmm.
to give me community that holds me accountable, to give me measurement and tracking that encourages me. It's a good feeling, right? To see that I've done that 5 days in a row. But it's also a warning if I see that I didn't do it for the last 5 days. It now gives me the ability to recommit. Where the nature of human learning, as you know, is going to always be I try it, I get bored or discouraged, I stop, but recommitment and being reminded and having accountability partners. This is about how do I use my technology to facilitate that, where it has great power to do that. If I'm only using my technology, again, shopping, working, entertainment, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Why not use it for these other things that
All
support
right.
my health?
Now, there is one piece of technology. I mean, I understand the smartwatch. I understand the phone. I use the phone a lot to help me.
Yeah,
I,
yeah.
every morning, I set timers,
Yeah,
alarms all through the day.
you're already doing it. Okay, very
Yeah,
nice.
I mean that, but that just tells me when I have to go to the next task. Now
Oh,
I
okay.
have to add. I
Put
have
the
to add.
snacks in, and
That's
now
right.
you'll be a bit better, right?
That's right. That's right. Uh, but here's one that I cannot even imagine using healthfully or deliberately, and that's this the what do you call it? The virtual reality lenses.
Okay, yeah, virtual reality, yeah. So I have some Oculus lenses. So yeah, I use VR.
Now, how do you use it responsibly, healthfully?
Okay, so responsibly movement. So I don't know if you've ever used apps within VR like Supernatural,
No, I haven't.
which kind of give you these environments within which you can do movement and exercise. So I found that very helpful, especially in the wintertime when I do not go outside. I do not go outside from Halloween until Easter, right? And so the VR movement and workout, right? I've got an app that is aerobic. I've got another one that's Tai Chi. Um, so here's the thing about VR. VR puts you in relaxing environments. Your nervous system doesn't know that you're not sitting on a beach in Tahiti. You
Okay.
still get a neurological effect because of the engagement of your five senses in these immersive, and we got
Mhm.
research to prove this now, right? So I do movement in VR, I do meditation and relaxation and breathing exercises in VR, and it's enhanced by the sound and the immersion, right?
Yeah.
Um, I do social in VR,
Hmm.
right? You go to places like Second Life, which is largely on your screen, but there are apps where you can go and be in community if that's what you'd like to do. And I can
Hmm.
send you some examples of that. Um, Certainly if you like big screens, you can watch your YouTube. So, in VR, you can have a bigger screen and a bigger environment for education in VR than you have in your living room. It's like
Okay.
there's a theater room inside of those lenses.
Okay. I
Okay?
have to rethink my strategy on
Yeah,
this.
so that's how I use VR.
Okay.
Right.
All right. Now, when I prepare these sessions, I always ask teenagers, if
Sure.
you sat in my chair, what question would you ask the guest? And this is the question that they posed.
Okay.
Why is it important for healthcare providers to have a digital health strategy?
So that they can better serve the patients that they treat based on a dominant aspect of that patient's lifestyle. So there is not really any more. Let me put it this way: there are very few people in our society who do not have a digital lifestyle. The vast majority of those people don't even know that they have it, nor do they think about it, but they do. If I'm a doctor or a provider, and there is some significant aspect of my patient's lifestyle that I'm not connected to, that I'm not aware of, that I'm not using as a part of the strategy for how to make them healthy, then there's a lost advantage. If a child is going, if a teenager spends 5 hours a day in social media, and I, as a healthcare provider, and I'm not talking to them about how they can use that same social media in order to make themselves healthy, say one of those 5 hours, think about the negative health effect. Think
Wow.
about the lack of prevention. So that's the imperative for providers and parents and educators and the juvenile system, all these systems, right? And communities of faith,
Yeah.
all of these systems, right, that shape human beings into citizens can no longer really responsibly ignore this element of digital lifestyle. But they pretty much all are. Tech enabled wellness.
Okay.
Okay,
One more
sure,
question.
sure. I hope that was a helpful answer.
Oh, yeah, you certainly have me thinking,
Oh,
Craig,
yeah.
which you always do. I
Yeah.
have to admit.
Okay.
Okay. Now, let's say someone in the audience has a team that
Yeah.
they manage, they work in, and they want to help them remain healthy. It could
Yeah.
be they have to work odd hours, and so it's harder on the bodies because they have to work these hard hours. How can they develop a strategy for using digital tech to really help the team?
Yeah. So there's an individual and a collective element here. So
Right.
at the individual level, just, you know, educating and modeling for people that an awareness of your sources of stress, how you cope with that stress, what your digital lifestyle is, and how your digital technology can help you, right? Through education, practice, community support, and measurement and tracking. Those are the four roles that technology plays in supporting our health. Just creating awareness that that's a model to think through
Yeah.
and to think about adopting is one. Second, as a leader, modeling that because people do what their leaders model.
Yeah.
Then understand that there are platforms out there that, with permission of members of the team,
Mhm.
will actually track the biometrics and self reported stress status of members of a team and actually feed back to the team and the team's leader what the collective stress level of the team is. Because, you know, all of our phones and smartwatches know when we're stressed out before we do. And then with that information, teams can then know that there's certain individuals or parts of the team that are getting overwhelmed. So now what do
Mm.
we do as a team in order to emotionally co-regulate is the term we use.
Mm.
Emotional co-regulation, where we all know that as a function of mirroring, neurological mirroring, we as human beings co-regulate. We get each other worked up or we calm one another down. And the leader has an above index effect in this regard,
Yeah.
right? So I have a friend who has this company called Sensi, and it's a smartphone app, and it does this. Like it keeps track of what the individual stress levels of team members are, which then gives leaders the ability to say, okay, I can see that the team is burning up or burning out. Everyone is at too high a level for
Mm.
too long
Mhm.
a period of time.
Mm.
Now, as a leader, you start thinking about, do I need to slow the team down, send certain people on a break or a vacation, start to integrate more of the breathing? Do we need to take a minute of silence?
Mhm.
Right?
Okay.
These
This.
are things that we now as leaders have to pay attention to
Yeah.
that we weren't before. This is what we call the neuroscience of leadership.
Yeah.
How do we pay attention to the nervous systems of those that we lead
Mm.
and then work to maintain well nervous systems that then go directly to resilience and productivity?
Outstanding.
All right.
Okay, you have opened my eyes to a totally new arena. Thank you.
Yes. Okay.
How can people learn more? Understand
Okay.
that you have
So,
something called stress.
a few different ways people can stay in touch with us. So one, I'm easily found on LinkedIn, and I welcome connections.
Mhm.
I've got a blog on Medium called the Digital Mental Health Project, where I write about these topics. I've got a newsletter on LinkedIn called Stress Tech Insights, where I write about tech enabled wellness in particular. And then I do talks, workshops, and even have an online course in Teachable on this topic of tech-enabled wellness. And what I can do, Madelyn, is I can get you a list of the links for how people can get in touch with
Okay,
me through that you can put in your show notes.
I will do that.
Okay, very nice. All right.
Outstanding. Well, Craig, I knew this would be a great conversation.
Yes, yes. I'm
I,
so grateful that you invited me to the discussion.
I had no idea you were going to just blow a few things, a few fuses in my head. I
Yeah,
so appreciate your time. Thank you
you're very
so
welcome.
much.
All righty. You be well.
Every now and then, there is something that changes how I think about the world. Grounds for Thought is a place where I talk about these moments so that you can explore the meaning for yourself. As I think about technology, I'm always struck by how it has transformed our lives. I can have instantaneous communication with people around the world, allowing me to maintain relationships. I can watch my favorite movies anytime I wish, which lets me retreat into a cocoon when I need some time off. I can even check the decibel levels in a noisy restaurant with the device that sits in my pocket all the time, meaning I can leave if the noise is harmful to my ears. And yes, I have done that. However, my concern is that technology's pull can isolate us from society, just as Craig has been talking about, leaving us separated from those who could help us when life becomes challenging. And of course, we know that those who are highly resilient always have a good social support structure. Also, the constant stream of information and engagement can overwhelm us to the point of trauma. After hearing Craig discuss the benefits of digital tools for our health, I want to share insights from two books that provide human solutions for overcoming isolation and trauma. The first book, The Transformation: Discovering Wholeness and Healing After Trauma. So let me get it up so you can read it, by James Gordon. The second is called The Body Keeps the Score: Brain, Mind, and Body in the Healing of Trauma, by Bessel van der Kolk. As usual, I'll focus on what impacted me personally, though each book offers much, much more. Both books emphasize the human body. Kolk states, as human beings, we belong to an extremely resilient species. Since time immemorial, we have rebounded from our relentless wars, countless disasters, and the violence and betrayal in our own lives. But traumatic experiences do leave traces, whether on a large scale or close to home, on our families, with dark secrets being imperceptibly passed down through generations. They also leave traces on our minds and emotions, on our capacity for joy and intimacy, and even on our biology and immune systems, unquote. Gordon addresses the same idea, but in different terms. He starts with a technique called soft belly breathing, where you breathe in a way that makes your stomach rise and fall. His detailed description is in his book, so please read it for the full explanation. Here's what it meant to me. I've always struggled with meditation, finding it hard to clear my mind or even to sit quietly for long periods. Meditation, while beneficial, takes time to show results. And when I learned soft belly breathing, I could do it easily and felt immediate relief. For someone like me, this was a big breakthrough. I now use this technique to reduce anxiety before events like, going to the dentist. It provides instant benefits. Returning to Kolk, he describes an historical event of the 16th century when simple Dutch farmers learned close order drill while fighting the Spanish Empire. This drill gave them a sense of purpose and solidarity and the ability to perform complicated maneuvers, leading to victory over the Spanish. I realized this technique fosters social support within a group. Members can act with mutual support regardless of their initial relationships. Doing something repetitive together helps bind the group, answering my question about the purpose of all that marching that you see. These strategies make life more bearable and effective without relying on technology. I know Craig was talking about technology, but we also have our own abilities here and contained within this wonderful being. Kolk shares a related story about Archbishop Desmond Tutu, who used song and dance during sessions where people shared their trauma. When someone was overwhelmed, Tutu would lead the group in singing or even dancing, allowing the person time to regain composure. This remarkable strategy combined deep breathing and group activity, easing individual stress while focusing on the event's purpose. Both books offer much more, but for me, these two strategies were game changers, altering how I approach challenges, whether traumatic or just noxious. Each book offers valuable techniques in itself, but for me, they confirmed strategies I previously thought unattainable for me. The Transformation: Discovering Wholeness and Healing After Trauma by James S. Gordon, and The Body Keeps the Score: Brain, Mind, and Body in the Healing of Trauma by Bessel van der Kolk. I want to thank you for joining me today. I hope you've enjoyed the conversation and learned something new. I know I sure did today. If you would like to explore more, go to my website, madelynblair.com, and schedule a free conversation. And if you're on YouTube, click the like button. And by all means, subscribe. Also remember that Greg is going to be sending me items that I'm going to list there, places where you can go for even more information. I'm Madelyn Blair, wishing you infinite possibilities as you unlock that resilient leader in you.